Hello and welcome to Link Ahead, the City of Dublin podcast. And not to brag, but we just keep upping our game with our guests, Bruce.
You are absolutely right, Lindsay. And joining us today is one of the musical greats in all of Ireland and worldwide. The Ireland part should give our listeners a clue as to what we're teeing up.
It's that time of year.
It's time to start planning your excursion to the 2024 Dublin Irish Festival.
All right, and our guest today has been here 10 times and is one of the most technically gifted, passionate teachers and acclaimed banjoists out there anywhere worldwide. Enda Scahill, welcome to Link Ahead.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you. You absolutely nailed the pronunciation of my name.
Oh, thank you. I was practicing before this, so thanks for your help there. As we said, you're a great teacher, so that's very helpful. And we are a couple of weeks away from this year's festival, so you're joining us via Zoom today. Where are you right now?
I'm in Galway City, west coast of Ireland.
Oh, I love it. You know, I went to Ireland last year and I didn't make it to Galway, so I can't wait to go back sometime and visit.
You might as well have not have come to Ireland.
I'll be back.
That's like I went to New York, but I didn't bother going to Manhattan.
Fair enough.
That's an absolutely fair statement. So how often are you at home versus the road, given your travel and your touring teaching schedule?
Yeah, now I'm at home all the time, which is a wonderful change of pace.
Nice.
So we Banjo 3 toured for almost 15 years. And when we did tour at our busiest, we were away for about 5 months a year. Spread out over the whole year, and but now with my new career as a teacher, I'm in this room making banjo videos. I play sessions in Galway City, travel a little bit around Ireland. It's a change of pace for sure. My wife and son are delighted that I'm around. At least I think they are. They tell me that I am.
Well, we're glad that we're getting you to come back to Dublin. Let's walk chronologically through your time in our great city. This is our 37th year. And as you know, we just love putting on the largest 3-day Irish festival in the whole world. When did you first come here?
So I first played Dublin in 2003.
Wow.
With a band called the Brock Maguire Band. We did it 1 year in 2003. And then with We Banjo 3, our very first American show was in 2012, and we played Milwaukee Irish Fest. And then we came back in 2013, and we did Dublin for the first time, and we're blown away. And then we did it every year that we could between 2013 and 2022, bar the 2 years of COVID when we couldn't travel. Well, we just loved it. It became a second home to us. You know, the Irish festivals are so special.
So when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, you're going to play Dublin, Ohio," what is your first reaction, and how did it even come out? How did you hear about us?
The very first year that I played it, I didn't know anything about anything. I was in a band with a couple of older guys, and I was the proverbial guy that turned up at the airport and went, "Where are we going today?" I had to think about nothing except playing the banjo, and that was lovely. But you know, it was on my radar from that time. And of course, all Irish musicians that want to tour in America, they know the circuit of the major Irish festivals. The three biggest ones are Dublin, Milwaukee, and Kansas City. And Dublin, of course, being the biggest 3-day Irish festival, we are aware of the distinction.
Right. Well, so what keeps bringing you back here? What's unique about our festival compared to the others?
And everybody's going to say the people, but it's the combination of the crowds, the audience who are just incredibly passionate about music, but it's the people that run the festival. It's all of the volunteers, it's the board, it's the committee. I mean, we just made such great friends. The favorite part for us was always pulling into the rec center on Friday with 200 boxes of merchandise and loading them inside and saying hello to Danae and all of the people that are in there that look after the artists, and everyone is so friendly and so kind. And you set up camp for 3 days. And it's wonderful. It's Dublin is a very walkable festival. It's very easy to get around. It's really enjoyable for artists to play it, apart from the insane heat.
Yes, it's walkable, but you will sweat.
Well, and that's the amazing thing about it. It's a park, the rest of the year until it's Irish Festival time, and just to bring in all that gear, the tents, the electric. I mean, it's a major undertaking. It's Milwaukee has that built-in festival ground, and we don't. We build everything. So
we've been in Kaufman Park in March when we'd come through and we'd do promo videos for the festival, and it's crazy to look at the grass and go, wow, this is what's this really intense festival site.
Yeah, it's right across from our office. And I'll say, that's where the Dublin Irish Festival is, and people don't believe it.
So let's go back to, you formed We Banjo 3 about a dozen years ago. And since then, the group has produced 2 Billboard #1 albums. And you obviously excel at performing live. What were some of your favorite local places to play besides, Dublin, Ohio, of course? Clearly
Dublin. We had amazing opportunities to play at different places around the world. We did a tour of Colombia in South America years ago. That was a lot of fun. It was so different. Wow. We've toured in Japan, which is incredibly special because it's such a different culture. We've played all over Europe, Germany, France, Belgium, Denmark, Norway, of course we play in Ireland. But we've just had such remarkable opportunities, particularly in the US. And the Irish festivals are special because there's an adoration for people that are from Ireland that travel to America to play at the Irish festivals. They really appreciate, they know the efforts, they know the costs of touring. They're aware of what it takes to get a band into the States. And there's an absolute reverence for what Irish bands do. And that's amazing. In the latter years of We Banjo 3, we got to play a lot of bluegrass festivals, which is really unusual for Irish bands. And we're not a bluegrass band by any strict definition. But because we're acoustic folk band playing Irish music with a kind of a tinge of American flavor in it, we got to play the marquee festivals. We did main stage Grey Fox Bluegrass Festival in 2019 in upstate New York, 9:00 on Friday night. There were noses out of joint that an Irish band were on main stage.
Well, what were some of the biggest bands that you shared the stage with?
I mean, we've played with all of the really well-known Irish acts, and for me, one of the most exciting things was getting to play with the likes of Solace, who, I grew up listening to Solace, Alton, Dervish. These guys were my heroes when I was a teenager, and I was kind of going around listening to tapes and CDs. In the bluegrass world, we got to play with Bela Fleck, who's he has won I think he has the record for the most Grammys in the most diverse set of musical genres.
Oh, that's a
wow.
good
So he has everything
there.
from bluegrass to classical to jazz to you name it, And we got to share a stage with him, and he's like, "Man, I don't know how you do all those triplets on the banjo."
Did you
I'm
teach?
standing there going, "Bela Fleck is talking to me."
But everybody gets along, right? I mean, it's got to be a great community.
It is. The Irish community is incredibly welcoming, and our sound engineer was from Baltimore in Maryland. He's a Texan originally, Army brat. So when you ask him where he's from, he just names every state of the base. But he's a heavy metal guy, and he's spent his life with like death metal bands and like really strong heavy metal. And then we met him in Washington D.C. years and years ago, and he said, "Guys, I want to do sound for you." And so for the very first time, he's at Irish festivals. And he said the thing he takes away, he said, when you go to a metal festival, no one talks to each other. You do the show.
Everyone's angry.
You don't even make eye contact.
No eye contact. You kind of drunkenly drag the lead singer and throw him into the bus and you drive off. And he said the Irish festivals is like a family. Everyone is playing with everybody else. They're like, "Hey, do you want to jump up with us on Sunday?" "Oh yeah, but only if you jump up with us on Saturday." And everyone gets along, and then everyone goes back to the hotel at the end of the evening, and they all just hang out all night. And he said it's so friendly and so nice and kind, and he was blown away. And that was, of course, well, we were totally used to that because that's largely what Irish people are anyway. And the whole Irish music scene it's the social music. Everybody gets together in a pub and plays for 3 or 4 hours and just has a lot of fun, and that's what it's always been about.
Well, speaking of family, and you mentioned that, your brother was in We Banjo 3. So is everyone in your family musically talented?
Yeah, we were the first generation in our family to play music. So if you go back through the generations, there wasn't a lineage of music. And so my older brother has 2 masters and a PhD.
Oh my!
in music, and specifically in Irish music, and he plays. He's a fantastic piano and accordion player. Of his sister that plays concertina. So we all play different instruments so that there wouldn't be too much competition. And I with a music teacher who came into the school when I was 8 years old, and I distinctly remember it. And she said, "Hands up, who wants to play the banjo?" And I don't even know why my hand shot up.
That's funny.
Well, Link Ahead Royalty, three-peat download queen, your friend and ours, Alison Leroy, she was just on our last episode, but she told me that I needed to ask you about playing in front of President Obama and Taoiseach Enda Kenny on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I think that was 2016. That's the date I have in my head. Anyway,
That sounds really cool.
We were on the plane flying over to do a big march tour as we we would always do. You know, we might be over for 5 or 6 weeks, and back then it was like €25 to get Wi-Fi on the plane. And out of boredom, I got Wi-Fi. Next thing, I get an email from the Department of Foreign Affairs in Ireland saying, "You've been invited to play on Capitol Hill for the Friends of Ireland luncheon. Are you free on this date?" And I looked at the calendar and I was like, that is literally the one day that we are free, and we're in the area.
That's funny.
So I just emailed straight back. I was like, yes, we'll figure out the logistics. So it was a wonderful experience. You know, we had to be in Capitol Hill for hours ahead, loads of security checks and all that kind of thing. My wife, when she heard that we were playing for Obama, she booked a plane ticket and she flew over for one night.
Oh,
Wow.
how cool. And did you bring the president on stage? Because he's got a pretty decent voice.
Yeah.
I've heard him sing.
He didn't play. He didn't sing. We asked him if he wanted to hold the banjo. He said that might be politically sensitive. Joe Biden held the banjo. He was very nice, actually. Joe. That was one of the main takeaways, is that Joe Biden was like a really cool dude. You know, he was
That's funny.
He was having fun, very relaxed, very easygoing. You know, and you had a whole load of Irish politicians as well. And and Enda Kenny, my namesake, was Taoiseach at the time. You know, and that was his last stint as Taoiseach. And the funny story that nobody knows is that when it came to taking a photograph with everybody, Enda Kenny muscled his way into the front of the photograph and shoved Dave, our singer, out of the way. So the photograph was Dave like this, craning his neck trying to get in, and we were like, "Man, you've had like 5 or 6 photographs with the president. You could have given us one."
You're the front man. Get out of the way.
What a memory.
And this year, you're coming with Gadan, an Italian band. Tell us about this musical venture and what diff goers can expect.
The funny story is that I know their tenor banjo player. His name is Lorenzo Testa, and he has played at Dublin before with Uncle Bard and the Dirty Bastards. It's this like metal rock band, right? A Celtic rock band, and they're awesome. And Gadan were on tour last summer, and they have a 4-string banjo player, which is what I play, and they have a clawhammer 5-string player. And all during the summer, when they put up a video, I would just comment on it jokingly, saying, "Lads, you need a third banjo." You know, kind of joking about wee banjo 3 that never actually really had 3 banjos.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic. And at the end of the summer, Lorenzo sent me a message. He goes, "Are you serious? Would you come on tour with us next summer?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure."
That's awesome.
So I've been out to, so I've learned all their music. I was in Italy at the start of this month for 3 nights, and I got to hang out with the guys. They're incredible musicians and really, really nice guys. So the lineup is guitar, fiddle, 4-string banjo, clawhammer banjo, mandolin, and then I'm coming on board playing an additional banjo. So, you know, we had to work out how to fit in all the banjos. But it's their fiddle player is insanely good. He's actually living in Sweden, and he's doing a master's in Swedish folk fiddle, and he's a phenomenal player.
Wow, interesting. A lot of international influences there. The Italian piece threw me, you know, Irish Festival. So are there any Italian influences that we can listen for?
No.
Not really? Okay, works for me.
Their guitar player, his name is Jacopo, and he plays with a Italian folk band that play Italian folk music, and they tour in America. They tour all over Europe and America, but they're folk musicians that just fell in love with Irish music. And there's that special thing about Irish music, is that it's extremely vibrant, right, and it's very high energy. And while Italian folk music is really fun and French folk music is really fun, any folk musician that we've come across in Europe, they all end up leaning into Irish music because of the vibrancy. And so these guys they're terrific musicians. So I'm very excited to come out and play with them.
Well, you're such a wealth of knowledge and talent. You have played and taught the Irish banjo for nearly 40 years. You're a beast on YouTube with hundreds of tutorial videos. I was trying last night, even though I don't have a banjo, so that might be the first step.
Step one, get a banjo.
You've published 2 best-selling books on Irish tenor banjo technique. So let's start with some basics for us and for our audience. What is unique about the Irish tenor banjo?
I mean, it's an interesting historical journey, right? And just to give it a little bit of context on it, like how is there an Irish banjo? So the banjo is an African instrument. It came to the Americas through slavery, and that's very well documented. And it became a kind of an Americanized instrument through the course of minstrelsy. And then when minstrelsy became what we now know as Appalachian or old time music, you have this fusion of Scottish and Irish immigrants that are meeting the African musicians. And so you have this whole melting pot that goes on, and that eventually branches out and becomes very refined into what we call bluegrass music. But during the time of the minstrels, they reckon that 80% of minstrel musicians were actually Irish indentured workers. So they were Irish musicians. And a couple of those bands traveled all over the world. And so the first time the banjo pops up in Ireland is in the 1850s. And the Virginia Minstrels, they toured all over the world. But the Irish banjo it's unique in the sense of how it's tuned and how it's played. So in its form factor, as you look at it, it has 4 strings, and it looks exactly like what we would call a jazz banjo or Dixieland, which people would be very familiar with.
Yeah.
You know, George Formby and all that kind of stuff. When Irish music became very popular in America in the early 1900s, Irish music was used for dancing. It was in the dance halls. They didn't have amplification. So you had this vaudeville era America, crazy stuff happening, really, really high energy. And in order for musicians to be heard over the feet of dancers, they needed loud instruments. And so that's when Irish musicians started playing the banjo, because it's really loud. Yeah. It's cacophonous.
Interesting.
So that's where Irish banjo got its feet into the tradition, but it didn't really take hold in Ireland until the 70s, the 1970s and the 1980s. Wow. And there was only a handful of musicians playing banjo even when I was a kid in the 80s, and now there are thousands, and it's extremely popular.
So when did you first pick up a banjo and start playing?
8 years old. I was in school. I had a music teacher. I was playing the penny whistle at the time, like so many kids, and this teacher came in and said, "Who wants to play the banjo?" And I shot my hand up. And I went home that evening. My mom was looking after the music teacher's baby, if that makes any sense, because my mom was on maternity leave from the school. Yeah. And there was a banjo at home with a list of instructions on how to start playing it. And I just took to it like a duck to water. I loved it from day one. I never had to practice. I just took it up and played it all the time.
That's awesome. So how would you describe your style?
It has changed so much over the years. There's a rebellious spirit that's in banjo. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Most banjo players I know are a little bit cracked, or a lot of bit cracked. An awful lot of them are, my wife would say, "My God, you're like, talk about fighting the system." But if you think about the history of the banjo, it goes back to slavery. Mm-hmm. And how hard they tried to repress the instrument because it was so instrumental, pardon the pun, in so many of the folk traditions. And it kept people alive. Bela Fleck has a documentary called "Throw Down Your Heart," and it's so morbid. But the slavers realized that if they brought a banjo player on board the ship, a higher percentage of the slaves survived the journey on the ship.
Wow!
So music was so important. So I always felt there's an ebullient, rebellious spirit to the instrument. No, that's only my own story. And so that's why I was so drawn to it. And so the way that I've played it has always been pushing the boundaries. Irish traditional music, like any traditional music, has boundaries. Right. And some people are very protective of those boundaries. There are gatekeepers that say there shouldn't even be banjo in traditional music. And if you do play it, you have to play it in a very certain fashion. And I've always been a boundary smasher when it comes to music. So I've always been very innovative. We Banjo 3 took Irish music and melded it with American folk music. That's why we were so popular, because it was incredibly fun while it was virtuosic, and maybe virtuous as well. So we brought both, and then we realized that we needed to bring in entertainment value. And the entertainment value sometimes in Ireland would be frowned upon because people would be like, "Whoa, it's not traditional," and
Right.
you're having a little bit too much fun, So now my music is very innovative. It's very explorative. I'll take a very simple folk tune and I'll try and play it in 100 different ways, bringing elements of jazz and bluegrass into it. That keeps me entertained as well musically. I just can't play a tune 4 times the same way every time. I just get bored.
Well, speaking of entertain, Bruce and I are hanging on every word. You are so fascinating when you talk about this. I mean, sometimes great players in anything, sports, music, aren't necessarily great teachers. What makes a great music teacher?
That's an excellent question. And the answer is humility. And that sounds like an egotistical answer. Oh, you need to be really humble.
Well, more irony.
You need to be humble and a great communicator. I say that almost with authority because that is what I have learned in the last number of years when I started making YouTube videos. And getting oneself out of the way in order to help somebody else and meeting them where they're at, that's what makes a great teacher. When I started making YouTube videos, I was making them for me.
Yeah.
I was making them for other high-level banjo players because I was putting myself on the internet, and there's that element of like, well, I better sound good. And I came across a comment on Facebook on one of the banjo groups where this man said, "I've had to mute Enda Scahill. I can't listen to him anymore. I'm just depressed."
Oh.
And initially I was like, what? But then I realized is that I'm not speaking to the beginners.
Right.
I'm only trying to impress myself. And I completely changed the way that I teach to focus it at the guy who's just taken a banjo out, he's retired or a gal or whatever. And having I don't say that with any ego, having the humility to kind of downgrade or to accommodate all of these different grades. So this is what I do now is that I'll take one tune and I might make 11 videos, tutorial videos for it. And it accommodates the guy who's just bought a banjo. Hit this note, move your finger to this string. But it also accommodates the 17-year-old who's like, I need more ornamentation and show me different ways to go. Blah, 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 blah. And so I do it all. And I do that many times every month. I'll take one tune and break it right down and then build it all the way up. So what makes a great teacher is, and I see, I've learned an awful lot from other teachers. And I've seen the teachers, and I don't know if this is a male thing, but I know a couple of female banjo players, and as soon as they sit down in front of a kid, they're like, "Oh my God, you're mighty, you're great," and they go into that kind of mothering role. And I've seen how that just is so important for kids that are learning, or for anyone that's learning. That wasn't natural to me. I had to learn that because I was all about technique, and I'm like, if you get your technique down,
right.
and if you work hard, and if you really practice, and so I've started bringing that aspect in, kind of going, my God, you're absolutely brilliant, well done. This,
Nice.
I try not to, but what I've seen is that people really rise up. If somebody tells me I'm great, I feel great and I play better. So it's like,
Good point.
makes sense.
There are a lot of great music quotes out there, and we came across this one prepping for this podcast, and it's, if I miss one day of practicing my music, I notice it. If I miss 2 days, my band notices it. If I miss 3 days, my audience will notice it. Is that true for you?
It is now.
Yeah.
And that comes with age, truly. There was decades in my life when I didn't have to practice because I just played so much, And I talked recently with, I have my own podcast called Inside the Banjoverse, and I had Bela Fleck on the podcast, and he says, he was talking about practice. He practices every day because if he doesn't, he will lose a bit of pace. And I experienced it last year where my wife and son and I went to the Canary Islands for 5 weeks.
Wow.
My son was in school online, so we said,
Hey, why not?
let's bring the whole carnival somewhere sunny, right? November in Ireland is pretty miserable. And I didn't bring a banjo. I just said I need a break.
Wow.
I came back and I couldn't play. I was absolutely terrifying, for about 6 weeks. It was so scary. My muscles had gone to jelly.
Oh, no.
I took up the banjo and I was like, everything is and I assume they call musicians small muscle athletes. Mm-hmm. And if you took a sprinter or a runner and said, just sit in bed for 5 weeks and then ask them to run a marathon, they wouldn't be able. And
Absolutely.
It's exactly like that, yeah.
Let's talk about some accolades. And yes, it's name drop too. So in 2022, you were the co-winner of the Steve Martin Banjo Award. Now, Martin is an accomplished player in his own right. Did you meet him or get to play with him?
Unfortunately not. The last time we played Merlefest, which is this amazing bluegrass festival in North Carolina, we were on stage at the same time. We were on the hillside stage, which is this awesome stage that rolls down the hill, and it's a wonderful stage to play. And he was on main stage with the band out of Asheville, North Carolina. I can't think of their name right now. And apparently he's a very generous guy, and he's but he gets absolutely mobbed at those festivals.
I'm sure.
That one in particular, backstage, is open to an awful lot of people. So there's like loads of volunteers, and there's people that can buy VIP passes to eat with the musicians and stuff. So I imagine that he did the show and got straight in his bus and disappeared, because it would have been. I would have loved to have met him. Clearly, All
right, let's bring it back to this year's festival. We're expecting more than 100,000 attendees to enjoy 7 stages, 60 acts, and a staggering lineup of more than 800 performers. 800. It's crazy. I'm throwing out a lot of numbers here, but are there musicians here that you look forward to seeing and talking to and catching up with?
Yeah, well, it's all our friends that we've met over the years. I haven't seen the guys from Scarivore for 2 years, and we did so much work together. They're a Scottish rock band, and they're one of the nicest bunch of guys you'll meet. So I'm really excited to see them. Talisk again, and oddly enough, another Scottish band. I can't understand anything that they say, but they're really nice guys, And all of the bands that we've met over the years have been so supportive, like Gaelic Storm and Scythian. These guys they're tremendously nice people. So I'm really looking forward just to linking back in with a lot of the guys that we would have known over the years, and I'm totally up for playing tunes with anyone that'll have me on stage.
Now, I've heard there's always a lot of music playing at the hotels when all the bands are here, the after hours there. But when you're here, do you have time to venture out and visit the city? Any restaurants, bars, pubs, or anything that you've grown fond of?
Oh, I have absolutely no idea. Anytime I've been... in fairness... When we played Dublin, we did all the headlining slots. So we might do the 10 o'clock show on a Saturday night. Right. That burns you out. So, it's awesome, right? But you finish at midnight, and then it's so intense and so insane. And by the time you get to the hotel, it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You're exhausted.
You're tired.
It's like, can I remember where I went to eat?
Well, at least every other podcast, we have to mention Dublin Village Tavern. Yeah, so if you haven't been there, highly recommend you go check that out.
Someone will take you there.
A pint or some food or whatever.
I did go for a haircut. Now, this isn't a positive story.
No.
I can't even remember the name of the place. But I kind of fell asleep because I was so tired, and he was cutting my hair. And then he shaved off my beard.
No way.
While you were sleeping?
It's kind of significantly long. Like there's a good inch in it. And next thing I felt something going around my chin. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And he shaved it down to stubble. And I was like, what have you done?
I can't believe it.
That's right. Note to our listeners, don't fall asleep in Dublin and get your hair cut, because you will lose your beard. Well, okay. As we wrap up every episode of Link Ahead, we like to end with rapid fire questions. So let's get that musical brain of yours firing.
I think he's ready.
All right, I'm sure he is. Besides the banjo, what other instrument do you play?
I play mandolin. And that's largely it, really.
All right. Well, what instrument have you never played but want to?
The uilleann pipes, the Irish elbow pipes.
Oh, nice.
If some mega star at Taylor Swift, U2, Adele said, I need a banjo player in my band, what's your absolute dream list to play with?
Ooh. They have to be a mega. I'd love to play with Mumford & Sons. I'd say those gigs
fantastic.
Absolutely sensational energy. Yeah.
Just start getting on their socials and say they need another banjo.
There you go.
Bruce Springsteen has done a whole folk set as well. I think that'd be really fun.
That would be awesome.
All right. What's your favorite Irish food?
Well, Irish food would be Irish scallops on black pudding with a celeriac puree. That's very specific.
Wait, do you cook? Folks. Are you a chef also?
I'm not a chef, but I am a very good cook.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Awesome. Well, all right, what's your favorite Irish food that must be cooked and consumed in Ireland?
Ooh. Well, I just caught a wild Atlantic salmon yesterday, and I'm going to cook that this evening, and that that's a particularly
All
special.
right, add fishermen to the list of accolades here. By
something
the way.
we can't say. I didn't catch a salmon out in the Scioto.
I caught it on a fly that I tied myself, so I'm multi-talentless, as they say.
Multi-talent. Are you a beer, wine, whiskey, none of the above, or all of the above kind of guy?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Wow.
Good answer. And how do you like your coffee?
One Line Coffee in Columbus. That's some of the best coffee in the world.
I'm writing this down.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Huh.
They actually, would you believe, they produced some Wee Banjo 3 coffee over the years. We used to sell coffee.
Really?
And it was roasted by One Line Coffee in Columbus.
All right. We're going to check that out. Lindsay and I are big coffee fans.
Here we are.
All right. What could we do here in Dublin, Ohio to make our Irish festival truly more Irish?
Turn the temperature down and make it rain.
Hey, if you were here today, when we're recording this, it's kind of rainy, overcast, a
That's
little cooler. Yeah, if you were here today, you wouldn't recognize the place. Lastly, tell us where and when to find you. Which stage, what time, all the details for this year's festival.
Do you know the beautiful thing of being a guest with another band is that I don't need to know these details. I used to kind of run the logistics of Wee Banjo 3 and know where we were at every solitary second. I'm literally turning up at the airport, but I do know we're playing because I looked it up today. I think we're on Friday. We're at 5:45 on the Dublin stage, and I think we're on the Dublin stage on Saturday, which is where we played with Wee Banjo 3. It's a magnificent stage.
Well, that's a great plug for everyone to get the Irish Festival app so you can find exactly all of your favorite Irish bands and what times and what stages.
And that is a great way to end this episode. Legendary Irish tenor banjoist and Dublin Irish Festival artist, Enda Scahill. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you soon in Dublin.
My pleasure. Can't wait.
And as we wrap up today, Enda, would you mind playing us a little something?
Yes.
We should have sent him our theme music and asked him to arrange it, with a banjo. That would have been cool.
And to our listeners, you can find everything you need to know about this year's festival at DublinIrishFestival.org. Yes.
Oh my
yes.
gosh. You couldn't see my feet under the table, but they were doing that Irish dance stuff.
That is awesome. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.